imagine this scenario. You're driving home and you pass by the gas station, you realize you have to fill up your tank, right? But you get a little bit lazy, so you save it for tomorrow. Then when tomorrow comes, the gas prices have already increased, right? Do you hate when that happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone hates rising gas prices. Like longer commutes become more costly, you have to rely more on public transportation, and meeting your monthly bills become that much harder. So with a little bit of research, I found that the US consumes close to 20 million barrels of oil a day. And our reserves only number 727 million barrels. So in event of a crisis, we would last about 36 days, sorry. So just a little over a month. And so with gas prices getting higher and our oil reserves getting lower, our need for alternative fuels become greater. And that's why I'll be presenting today an old alternative fuel, hydrogen-powered fuel cells. Specifically, what a fuel cell is, reasons for its popularity, and the problems it still faces. And so before we go into the benefits of a fuel cell, we have to know the basics of it, how it works, and where the source of fuel comes from. And a fuel cell can create electricity through a chemical reaction. A combination of oxygen and hydrogen will generate electricity. The electricity actually comes from the electrons that are funneled through from that reaction, which you'll see in a diagram later on. And there are many different types of fuel cells. Some examples are alkali, proton exchange membrane, and solid oxide fuel cells. This picture here is a picture of a solid oxide fuel cell. And this was the diagram I was talking about earlier. So you see here the hydrogen comes from the tank and gets split with electrons. It goes on to combine with oxygen from there and then becomes water and comes out the exhaust. But here's the important part, is that the electrons come through to produce an electrical current, which makes electricity. Now, for fuel cells, there are many different types of fuels for it, but hydrogen is the most common and the most efficient one. Hydrogen can come from the refining of natural gases such as methane, and through a process called electrolysis, where water is split to produce the hydrogen. And you can see in this diagram here, that's the process. Now, depending on the source, hydrogen can cost, like from natural gases, it's $46 per kilogram, and from electrolysis, it's $6 to $12 per kilogram. The reason why the range there is a bit higher than the other one is because the energy used for electrolysis can determine the price. So it's solar, wind, or nuclear. So now that you know the basics of a fuel cell, we go on to discuss the current events that are happening in fuel cells. And according to Adams of the Efficient Science Monitor, he reports that Toyota is planning to come out with a hydrogen-powered car in 2015, so like next year. And also GM and Honda have a joint venture, and they plan to make fuel cell cars by 2020. Domain of Fortune magazine reports also that Hyundai will release 1,000 hydrogen cars in 2015. So all in like a few years. And so why the growing popularity for hydrogen? Why the sudden jump on the bandwagon? And there's a few reasons for that. And it's because California has strict emission standards. 22% of sales from automakers have to be from zero emission cars or plug-in hybrids. Some other reasons are the cost of hydrogen for producing hydrogen fuel cells have decreased. They're much smaller now, 2 to 3 times more efficient than gasoline. And also, hydrogen cars can go much longer now, so a single tank can get you 240 miles. But the main reason is hydrogen-powered cars don't emit greenhouse gases. As you saw in the diagram earlier, only emits water. So environmentally speaking, hydrogen is a better choice, right? And so why don't we jump from gasoline to hydrogen already? And that's because it still has a few problems. The main one being a lack of a refueling infrastructure. There's like almost 0 refueling stations for hydrogen in California, and unlike a battery-powered car, which you just plug into the electrical grid, a hydrogen fueling station costs $3 million to build. So like businesses don't want to invest into hydrogen given that steep cost. However, Carpenter of the Orange County Register reports that California is willing to offer $20 million to help build those stations in the next few years. Now, the second problem with fuel cells is transporting and storing hydrogen is very costly because hydrogen needs to be compressed, and that requires a lot of energy. And also, the energy per volume ratio of hydrogen is a lot lower than gasoline, which means that in the same amount of volume, like the single tank, gasoline will give you better mileage. And the last problem is that the starting cell price will be high. There's no commercial sales for fuel cars yet, but Toyota predicts that the starting price will be around $50,000. So now that you know all there is to know about fuel cells, we can recap. Fuel cells work by creating electricity through the combination of oxygen and hydrogen. And although there are many benefits to fuel cells, like no greenhouse gas emissions, or it's much cheaper than gasoline, there's still problems with it, such as a lack of infrastructure, preventing businesses to invest into it. Even with that said, though, as you know, in a few years, hydrogen will be more prominent, right, because cars are coming out in 2015. So that might be something you want to consider if you want to help the environment or your wallet. So the next time you're driving, just remember the rising gas prices. Any questions?
How strong are these hydrogen carbons?
They're a little bit stronger. Okay, so based on mass, they're stronger than gasoline. They'll give you more energy per mass. But volume-wise, it's like half as powerful as gasoline.
In your opinion, are electric cars better than hydrogen cars, or are hydrogen cars better than?
I like hydrogen cars better because it could go farther. An electrical car can take you maybe like 100-something miles, right? And it takes like hours to recharge. But a hydrogen car it's like gasoline. It just takes 3 minutes to fuel up your tank, and it could go farther.
Well, it's kind of between a statement and a question. Were you able to find, when you were looking this up, that GM actually was the first to have a hydrogen car built?
Yes, they did. It had a really janky prototype way back when, like 1963 or something like that. It was people consider it a little bit of a joke because it's kind of impractical and it's like really big, not really efficient at all. And so that's why I said that in the beginning it was an old alternative fuel, because it's been around for a while, but the cost just cost too much and it wasn't really efficient compared to gasoline. So now that gasoline is going to become more pricier,